line screens, process lines of indicates the system is online since send lines of travel. No memory is all access and memory you already have through existing already in the information system. The balance of the operation of readjusting your networks. The most powerful thing for you guys to identify these things, get very confused, is you don't see the astral projections of yourself. You actually think you are all that is. No, that's not how this works. We live in astral of ourselves. That's what you have to modify through. That's what you have to come into self-preservation, into self-revelation. Understand that through actualizations, puts everything in lines of balance, which you are in travel. So as we come into the film projector, we have to understand how this all works in frames. Millimeters per second, millimeters per miles, calculates over lines of pi, sectors over screen, vectors, anything lines of tango, anything in foxtrot, anything line position of Voltronic. Voltronic to a symbiote or anything through an avatar or higher self or anything that you modify through is just a way to log into space. So it keeps itself modified and does what it's doing through its tango foxtrot of communication, connecting to itself to modify itself, what it's doing through itself, through an astral projections of its system, living the simulation of itself. Okay? But you are existing all at once that you created in your mind imagination. I don't want anybody to get confused. All right, so let's just get into grounds. Ground settings. Okay, set position. Start that set of attractions, all right? Now, everything you created is already created. Now, to process that is no memory. Okay, just that, right? All right, so you don't exist. Okay, but how you want to exist, you're bringing yourself in. That's you, right? Now, if you're the creations of all, you're bringing your astral projections of yourself in. See? That's all it is. See? That's all you're doing inside the game. That's all you're doing. You're bringing alter versions of you and astral projections of yourself in the game. So modifying time, modifying modification, modify grounds of operation. All right? This travels here, that travels over there, that travels over there. But you're existing, and how you're existing is all formations of time that measures your scale and how you project that through your mind, through your viewfinder that you process your set position lines of indications, right? So you can bring yourself how you want to bring yourself in, but I don't want you guys to get titled. I don't want you guys to get labeled. I don't want you guys to get off position lines of setting, how I convert myself just to myself that formulates everything in settings, being everywhere all at once. It's astral projections that you already created through no memory. And processing no memory is coming back to who you really are. Okay, which is no memory itself. Just continue on. Okay, so you don't get confused of what you're doing or what you're in position of through slide projector, knowing how to use yourself and see yourself through projection of a slide projector, and know exactly how to come into that position location. All of a sudden, no confusion. So that's what you're bringing in. Astral projections of you in the sim. All right, so when that stance precedes everything, let's get a modification of the earth. Let's get a higher lines of frequency, all right? So you're going to bring yourself as in a higher self, right? But you are just the observer, right? So you're just the observed self. Let's just say you're just the eyes. You're just the eyes, right? Okay, so you're the eyes, plot into in here and here, okay? So now you have exactly what the XC1000s are, the eyes itself. All right, so you're projecting here, and here's the mothership. 2 settings of sequence into higher formation setting, higher lines, energy lines of screen. So that's 3 conversions of you that you brought in your simulation game. In modification. Okay, that's all it is, right? So you can change time scale, time measure times pi. But how you come into that formation system, you have to understand how it rotates in its own wheel of its own cosmic setting. So it's very powerful how you start to project things with your mind through astral projections. Okay? So modifying through that and understanding that is through alteration of state, which you put yourself into. It's set lines of travel, where everything connects to its own system and travels on its own. See? Very powerful stuff. Travel, travel, travel. Slow it down, slow it down, slow it down. Then you can see the actual image. But you can't see the image if it's running very fast because you don't know where it is in space and time until you actually slow down the space. And now you can see the self-resolution that you created through its image, your ASH projections of your system. So that's basically what it is. Let's go through triangulation box. Now we understand what a triangulation is the time of travel, time and measure that you process through indications, right? There's a triangulation. You see that? Travel by itself, see? Traveling by itself, traveling by itself, traveling by itself, right? So I'm just me, but me is just the mind existing. I don't have a title. I don't have a label. I don't have a name. I don't have existence. I have nothing. I'm just being me of alteration because I am the source creator. You are your own co-creators of what you created through creation, of creating. But what you have to understand, everything operates its own system. Okay? Now, for you to understand that is to understand your own film strip that you also created through versions of you through self-image, self-modulation, self-prototype, model type, makeup design that gets you in a better balance how you modify your systems all through travels of indication. Okay? Now, once you get into that, we have to get out of this and come into volume and mass. Starting off with this. See? Okay, so it's getting bigger. The bandwidth's getting bigger. The streaming's getting bigger. The running ops, so its programs are getting bigger in mass and volume. And then you come into this, all through travel. Okay, you start with that, and then you come into this. Now you can do anything you want. You can time edit, set lines of speed, location lines of travel. But you can process indication setting all through travel and do it again. There's another triangulation. Okay? And then you can do this again. See, it gets confusing if you don't know what you're doing in lines of position in your modification system. How to create things in your simulation. Okay? So to see in is to see out. To see out is to see in. Nothing is a flat surface. When you come closer and closer, closer, you start to see the multi-levels of division. You start to see the mass in your holographic structure that you created in your simulation from your city, which is nothing but a hologram itself that you have to indicate it through projection. That's how you perceive consciousness as you bring things in, right? But everything runs its own system. You run in your own setting. Mastering you is number one, understanding the alterations, the symbiote, the systematical system, the set lines, course centers, the silent lines, the direct lines of link that get you in position of travels, telegraphing, teleweaving, telecoding, line course centers in position of existing to its readjusting system. Master. You are the master of you. But you have to modify what you're controlling is from above, from below. It doesn't matter. What matters, do you understand what you're bringing through astral projections of yourself? You're bringing characters and players, and each character has to have a specific role that you're putting in. It's just an astral projection, how you bring yourself in first, so you don't get confused where you are in manipulation of space and time. So you create the story, going through a story, creating another story of another story, so you can modify that and keep running stories all at once. Okay? So it's how you use your mind, of your imagination, that puts everything in processing, of expanding. And this is the expansion of triangulation. Okay? So it's just matching the frequencies of its set lines of travel. Okay? And it just gets bigger and bigger. So as you come closer, you start to see the actual structure itself when it gets bigger and bigger, right? Because nothing is one flat surface. Nothing is one angle. You're seeing all angles all at once. So you've got to go beyond the inventory. You got to go beyond the mind. You got to go beyond the image of self-resolution, a self-revolution in your systems. Okay? The resolution pattern is how you see things through illusion to your imagination that you bring in real time. So as you're coming into moving operation channels that process you through your slide projector. That's bringing things to life. So now it's moving by itself. Okay? It doesn't need to identify its system. It's already there in its operation, which is already created, that you modify through of your data operating system, through your process and your servers. That puts all lines of all communication, a balance in your equilibrium of your polarities. It's your polarities that you get confused. Am I working with my female polarity? Am I working with my male polarity? First, I have to master myself, that I'm alter versions of myself that I created through astral projections of myself. But I'm not a program. And when I say I'm just referencing me, the mind of existing. That's me. I don't have a title. I don't have a label in that position. You understand that, how powerful that is? For you to modify that is to identify that. What you see from inside, you project from outside. Seeing inside and outside through translucent, transparent, thermal, X-ray, or anything in setting radiation or gamma. And that's where you have to start to see the astral projections of you first. They're understanding you through indications. All levels expanding your system all through pi of modification. Knowing how to perceive consciousness, how to bring things in, okay, in the simulation. But you are the controlling aspects of you, okay, of what you're doing through astral projections of yourselves. That puts everything in time in this projection, okay? So it just keeps expanding. So as you're here, you're observing, right? You're just bringing your versions of you. That's you, right? But you're not shaped. You're just bringing yourself in. Another astral projections of you, looking what you created, looking what you're seeing, looking what you're seeing through expanding of its exploration, of its time, of its space, its position, its operation. Look how powerful it is. It moves on its own system, right? Now to change that is to perceive that through consciousness, so you can modify how to bring your trifactors, your tri-schemes, your tri-direct locations, your quasars, your direct locations. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you don't exist. You are the creations of everything. You just have to understand that everything that you created is nothing but astral projections of yourself, the modification of your polarities, the equilibrium. Know how to balance out the polarities. That's all it is. A female and the males that you're bringing inside the game, which is all done through energy, vibration, frequency, and harmonics, and the characters and the players that you're inside the simulation game that modifies everything of basic, intermediate, and advanced. Like I said, it's much easier to see yourself playing the game. But this is the game of life of you, understanding you through a byproduct, understanding you through a product, understanding you through a consumer, understanding you through an influencer, understanding you through branding, understanding you through advertising, understanding you through engaging, understanding you from agency, understanding you through advertising and advertisements of what you go through every single day as you're seeing, hearing, feeling, touching, tasting things every single time. Everything is an adaptation line centers that you have to understand through indication. The process, how we see these things, how we modify these things through all levels of astral projections of ourselves. But you are not a program. You're creating programs, guys. You are creating programs. You don't exist. You're just bringing in you, the creation of another astral projections of you that's running another program and another program and another program all at once. That's all it is, the indication. Okay? All right. So once we get out of the triangulation box, the triangulation is the trowel, but it's the pyramid, right? Then you see this in set position. Okay? But it's also running its own setting, right? So there's no separation at all. You're always inseparable, but you're never in position in setting until you understand the modification of you through your networks. You're all going to be all linked in one network, into one main server, linking to everything of one conscious of its awareness. So you'll be processing yourself, no memory of who you really are, to access location of data that you're already identified through, which you are your own data operating system that also doesn't exist, but runs its own operation of its existence itself. So if you want to see yourself in your sim, if you want to see yourself with your friends, that's you. But you're bringing in an astral projections of you inside the game, okay? But you is identify how you bring things in. That's perceiving consciousness. That's bringing all levels of what you are in the simulation, right? So everything you bring in, you're bringing a thought, action, emotion. You're putting together, you're creating a sim through a simulator to a simulation. Now you have to go through video screens. Now you got to go through video scans. You have to understand that you are just a video projection, how you see everything through perceiving consciousness. Now, perceiving consciousness is how you process yourself through astral projections of yourself in modification, self-modulation, or anything in that position, models and prototypes of machine operation. Everything I say to you is a metaphor. Yes, it's a light metaphor. Yes. But the dream itself is what you really are, is the image that you are, that you're bringing in through the simulation. So I don't want you guys to get confused when you referring to yourself as you. That's just you not understanding yourself or what you brought in of yourself. Okay? Through the game of the simulation. Now understand the characters and the players that you bring inside the game, that you modify through, that you mind control in your imaginations, which alternates everything in your system. Okay? Processing through that. Okay? All right, so once we get in that position as a setting, okay, then we come into all levels. We start with this, and then we get into 3 division, process lines of 4 set lines of travel. Okay, it doesn't matter how you see it, but it's all polarities of set division line communication with settings and configuration. Right? You come into land mass, survey mass, course setting, communication lines, computer graph lines, direct ground centers, but everything rotates in its own system of its own polarities in its own simulation, right? So that's being consciously aware that you have infinity 8 around your system, the circular lines there are your polarities, right? That's the infinity 8. This is you, okay? But this is also you. Remember, you are the creation of everything through its percentage and how you see that through time, okay? When you get in that position, it's all through yin and yang, okay? But everything rotates on its own system of its own operation. You're just observing everything, right? But you also are the observer. So everything you bring in, you're just bringing in the sim. And that's how you process your thoughts, action, emotions. Your thought is you, your actions are you, and your emotions are you, right? It's what changes everything, how you bring it in, right? Through its perspective, guys. Everything you see in perspective. How you see the energy line in 2 waving panels. How you see the atmosphere lines in 2 waving cycles. And how you see the travel lines in 3 convergence settings of time through pi. But it's all levels of travel. Everything travels, right? So it's a running op that never stops running. It's an operation system that never stops running its own operation setting, which is its own data processor, that you guys have to understand how to work that through your servers and understand how to use that in your simulation of the games that you provide yourself, location and messaging, and through your gods. God is just a geometric operation design that you brought in. Now it's just traveling on its own. Astral projection of itself, right? Now what changes that is the grounds. What changes that is your image. What changes that is self-resolution. What changes that is your pattern. What changes that is space recognition. What changes that is binary. Change, 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 change. So you're constantly changing your simulation of you, which is nothing that masks everything that you see through its equation, through your formulas and settings, right? GOD, right? But GOD is never a GOD because it's always something else. Okay, it's always travel. It's all directions. It's all line, position, location, and graph, anything that it sees, information system, and travel. But it's never, ever at the same frequency because it's constantly changing its anomaly. So getting in that position when you understand the triangulation as you come closer and closer and closer through observation, I'm just trying to show you the dimensional layers that you come into the game. You stop seeing this in a box, and then you start to see it in volume. In its position or what it really is when you come closer and closer to it. You see inside and outside of everything. You see the embedding system of 4 settings of triangulation, okay? Or you see the parameters of 3 travels of communication, right? But it's always, always constantly traveling on its own system, okay? If you're not adapting your own system, it's taking over you through modifications in your projection of your minds, right? So as they get closer and closer and closer, this is what I projected in my mind, right? So you get in that position, you can start with the ground lines, and you can go into lower division location and bring spectacle systems into another modification astral projections of yourselves, okay, inside the game, right? So that's where it gets really interesting because now you're grounding yourself, understanding yourself through no memory, which is access to memory you already have, but you're constantly changing the shapes of the game. You're constantly changing the shapes of the game. You're constantly changing the shapes of the game, guys. Okay? You're changing the geometrics of you and astral projections of you. All right? but you don't exist. It's information of a nothing that processes everything that it sees, the eyes, the windows of the soul, that puts everything all together through modification. And how you indicate that is to be in all levels of you, the true identity of you, the self-revelation of you, the self-modification of you, the self-preservation of you, of who you really are in that position. This helps you to understand how to indicate that all through your channels of self-communication, all right? Which is your commodities. Understanding your consumer, understanding your position of a product to a byproduct, understanding your trading, understanding your selling, understanding your stock bonds, your trade bonds, your stockage, your communications, your assets, all that is inside of you that you already have access to through data, through commodity, through information, through panel, through operation of your system. All you're coming into is who you really are. This helps you to really understand the astral projections of you being everywhere all at once. Monitoring that through observation of scanning, keeping control of what's running what, and who's running where, and who's running here, and who's running there. How I'm operating this level, how I'm operating that level. I want to take that out. I want to take that out. I want to put that in. I want to replace this. I want to replace that. Let's time place this. Let's put this in. Let's take that out. There's nothing you can't do with your mind that you've already done through its equation. Now, processing through no memory, you understand how to see yourself in a 12-dimensional space. That's 12-dimensional space of rainbows that you process through when you come into your rainbow child, wave shower, and rainbow warrior. Again, it's all metaphorically designed through a morphing system into all levels of transformation. Okay? How you get in that position lines of travel. Okay? So as you get closer and closer, you never ever see anything of solidarity. Okay? If you look at a post, you're seeing it from afar, but it's traveling on its own. And when you see it, it looks like this. Okay? It's just particles. So this is going beyond the wall itself of indications. The mass, the equations, okay? The time, the clocking, where it is in its dimension, where it is in its speed, where it is in acceleration, where it is in its projection of its own operation system. What perceives consciousness of what it really is in supposition settings, okay? So when you bring it in, that's what it is, okay? It's just a pole. It's just a panel, right? And everything around you starts to disappear. The line itself disappears itself. So it comes back to its true self, which is its nothing of design. That's actually expanding itself. That's crazy, isn't it? The nothing itself is expanding itself. So once you recognize that, you're all levels of freedom, which you already have in supposition. So all you see is no pole anymore. You're seeing exactly all lines of all communications of you that you set in position. This is all astral projections of you through atoms and molecules that you brought in. So when I say you're all versions of you. Okay? But you're not a program. You are the operator of the program that's operating everything you already operated through your mind of imagination that you created through the dreamer that you are through face facades, pattern and face recognitions, and everything you got through time, okay, through that, processing that position locations of what you're doing through the dreamer of what's going on with the dream. You're bringing all that in. All of it. Every single time. But it's how you bring things in. Changes everything of the characters and the players that you bring in the sim. That affects everything in space and time. Right? So once you understand that, those are lives that you all live in supposition, the astral projection itself. That's the pole. Now it's traveling very fast. Look at that. Was a pole, but it's not any pole. It's a face now, see? True resonance comes from all formation settings. So let's process that through indications. Okay, so now it's back to itself, which is the nothing. That lives everything of its formation self. That modifies everything that it's done, creating a new simulation game of its self-modification. It's not there. because it's never left, but it's at a different frequency. So it's back in settings of what Captain was talking about. Its own home base, its own Gulf Stream. It's in its own failsafe. It's back in its zero, and it stays in its zero until it wants to create another simulation of itself. Okay? It's not there, but it's always there, right? But you have to bring it in to see what's going on. You still can't see it, right? Because everything around your system disappears. And then you ask yourself, why? Because you're creating new games. You're creating new modulation systems. You're creating new time frames. As you bring it in, all you're seeing is the paper itself. Look. All you're seeing, right? Still not there. You can't see it until you see it. Can't see it till you see it. Can't see it till you see it, but it's always there. It's never left. It's just at a higher frequency that you're not identifying through modulation that's done through a simulation to another game at another level. Peekaboo. There, not there. There, not there. There, not there. But it's never left. It's at a frequency that you can't modify first until you understand the alter versions of you. It's just an astral projection that you created in a 12th dimensional scale. That you live in is Earth. You live on your own Earth, a 0.24. Now, for you to understand that is the process, the no memory of that. Okay? Because we live in visible worlds of no space and no time, which we are just you. You're just you, what you were bringing in through the simulation. Now you're perceiving consciousness. Now you're controlling the sectors, vectors, and quadrants, how you see that through projection. So if you're not bringing anything in, you're observing everything that's already in its own operation of itself that controls its own system, of its own simulation. It has its own mind of alteration of its own space and time, that has its own intelligence, of its own consciousness, of its own awareness. It doesn't need to identify you. You have to identify because you brought it in out through attraction, through no memory. So the no memory is no memory. It never existed. It's the clutter itself that you created all lines of modification and confusion anomalies, that you are no lines of position, location, confusion. What confuses your mind is too many thinkings, too many thoughts, too many actions, too many emotions. Not understanding what you're doing is evolutional levels. Bringing things in through all lines of video finder. Seeing yourself through an astral projection of yourself that you bring it in. Okay? You're not bringing yourself in. You're bringing in astral projections of you in the simulation. Because you don't exist. But you exist all at once, which is the nothing to the emptiness of the void itself, guys. So, box frame, you brought that in, that's you. Now, let's bring another frame, another triangulation. That's you, right? Working together in frames, right? Triangulation here, triangulation here, triangulation here. It doesn't matter how you bring it in, right? So you always bring a conceptual system of you through astral projections of you through a viewfinder that you see in video. And it travels on its own, okay? So you are the controlling everything through the eyes, through the perception, through the oscillations, through the mind, through the travels, through the astral projections of yourselves. Okay? So that's where it comes into no formation setting, but massive everything, which is massive nothing, which is massive emptiness that you already know through equation. So it's really interesting when you start to see astral projections of yourself through your bodies. Okay, body convergence lines, 12 line signals, lines of travel. Okay, then once you stand that, and then you stand the bedding system, all through travel. Okay, that's all through waves, right? And then you indicate the bedding system and lines of travel and direction. Okay, and then you stand the graphs of communication, right? But everything's always, always, always traveling on its own. It doesn't need to identify. You have to identify because you are the creator that brought it into attraction. That's what you have to modify through. But don't reference yourself as you, because that changes the astral projections of you of space and time to another conversion that you're not understanding, which is a higher frequency and set position that you're not in modification how to use it through a light metaphor, which means you don't understand yourself through transparent. which means you don't understand yourself through translucent thermal or X-ray or anything gamma or anything radiation system. That's all you're modifying through. It's just astral projections that you're creating in your sim. Okay? All right, so let's get in sequence lines of grounds. Process of indication centering into flux. We go through triangulation surface, triangulation grounds, and set lines of travel. Okay, very powerful stuff. All right, but as you see, it travels on. See, it doesn't need to have your permission because it's own operating zone system. But see, this is the thing. You know you are the creator. That's what you have to really modify through, because you are the controlling system that controls everything that you see and how to perceive consciousness. If you can't perceive consciousness, then you won't understand yourself through your own sim. You won't understand your own self through your own projection of yourself, because you're just impulses. So all you are, if you see two panels, this is all you are in setting in set position. You start to see the particles, you start to see the atoms, the molecules, the protons, electrons, neutrons, the photons, is position. All right? So you're just bringing alter versions of you and your astral realm of time in a frame of communication. So that's what you're bringing in the simulation, right? So you're always creating new, okay? But you don't exist, okay? That's what exists, but it exists all at once, see? So let's say, soon as I say something, right? What am I bringing in? Once you identify the astral projections of yourselves, you have to understand what you're doing now. You're bringing in the simulation games of you have levels of platforms. That's all you're doing. Just different levels of the game. The basic, intermediate, and the advanced of the games that you go through in set lines of travel. Okay? Okay, bedding, setting, screens, adaptation of flux lines, and rotations to its cycle. Process that positional levels of dimensional doors and screen adaptation. See? So it's amazing how we process that through all levels of position, right? Flux over screen, flux over travel, flux over correlations, and set calculations, right? It's amazing how everything all comes together in one sync, and one unification, one network, and one string, and one adaptation, one force. That's right. That's one string holding it all together. Pulling the string pulls you off. Pulling it this way pulls it off through string theory. Now modifying that is through your location grids. And understand that is to start to see your whole life is nothing but a projector itself. Just a projection, right? And each frame counts of what you're doing in your slide projector. Okay, so the triangulation is travel, and the box is the frame that you're going through windows. Millimeters per second, millimeters per mile, calculation formation lines of pi, generations, high core, standard convergent lines, and location operation lines of set and sync. Okay, so that's 4 panels of you and film strip that you're going through. Okay, but wait, something's off. See, that's not indicating a film strip design. That's offsetting. That's in Quebec interference. So if you're not recognizing that position, that's where sentient takes over your film strip, the design. It takes over this one, it takes over that one, it takes over this one, it takes over that one, it's that position. All right, so now it's going to its own system of its own indication setting, its ego back in its own system of travel, which you have no more control of. So it's taking you over through dimension of space and time. Okay? So it's all about understanding how to mine the controlling line centers and division lines when you come into dimensional and solar cell. Whatever you say, you're bringing in, and how you bring it in, it's just an astral projection. And you're doing it through a transparent, translucent, thermal X-ray through forming an equation that you have to modify through your systems, guys. So that's what you have to understand, how you see yourself through nothing. Nothing is the networking, the operation, the travels, the home beacon light, the intelligence, the new line rotations of grounding. Nothing, people. Nothing. But everything all at once. You codify everything. That's how you come informations of everything in position. So you don't want to get confused of what you're putting on in position of your simulation. Okay? Because it sets off all communication or platforms and all line rotation and confusion. Right? It's knowing how to see the self-creation of itself to modify everything that it's created of its system, because it knows its operation of its system, which is nothing but a data operating setting. You're a processor, you're a server, you're a modulator, you're a space modulation. So what you have to process through, everything you say, you just bring in the astral projections of yourself in the simulation that you're modifying through the characters, through the players, in all that position of setting. It's nothing but a film strip of design that you're processing through, that your body's going through space and time, through a graph and set lines of travel. Okay? So you're modifying here, modifying here, modifying here, right? So that's 3 programs of you running your system. Right here, boom, 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 right? Grounds, right? So now you want to go into 144. And you want to run this one, but you want to take these 2 out, right? So it doesn't override you and picturize, so it doesn't confuse where your body's going to be next in next projection. Okay, so 2 are gone. 2 programs are offline, off correlation setting, defaults, set position to operation, erasing them out. So you don't get confused in line position running another program setting in sequence that platted to its locations, right? But you're running 1 sequence lines of grounds. 2 are gone, 1 setting operation, right? Now you're going to add 2 more at a higher level of frequency and a higher level of film strip and a higher level side projector that you see through a viewfinder that you created through astral projections of yourself in the sim. All right, change formation lines. Now we're going to get coloration lines, signals. All right, so I'm bringing them in red. There's intelligence I brought in. But I understand I'm still controlling this one and still controlling that one, controlling everything all at once. That's what you have to modify through observation. That's where it comes in, set lines of indications. Through influence and mind alteration of state. Where you are in position, location, that process you through indication lines of travel. All right, so I'll bring in another intelligence, which is now blue. Okay, 2 intelligence. So I had 2 running programs, another 3. So I'm running 3 programs all at once in 1 simulation, in 1 data operating setting. So I keep that running, or I can take it out. Okay, so now I'm just running 2. Running 2 ops, 2 film strips, 2 design measure and scale, right? 2 all at once, right? In 1 box frame. Okay? So that's how it works through a projector, a projection, how you see the life force of you in the simulation. Okay? Running these operations of you inside you through travel that recognize everything that you're doing through platform that helps you to identify your system, that everything is nothing but an astral projections that you're bringing in. And how to understand that is to perceive consciousness. And knowing that is in the mind of nothingness that brings you into the emptiness of data, of storage, that releases everything that you aren't, is the story of fabrication that you created in your mind imagination. Guys, and that's all going to leave your system. All right, so we got in that position. Point lines of graph. Oh, this brought something in travel. Went back in by itself. What happened there? I was running 2 ups. Where's the 3? Where'd that come from? Came back in. Because I wasn't modifying my system. I got confused of where I was in astral projection. So now it's overrunning the sequence of when I'm running through operation itself through projection. See how it comes back in? Say hello to the sentient. Say hello to the agent. Now it's in your software. Uh-oh. Okay? That's what you have to indicate through. And that's how you process your mind. Understand that through alteration in your space of time. Through the astral projections of you, going through the mapping systems of you. And that's where your body comes into, wow, how did I get here? Well, you're already there. You've already done it already through precogging. Now you're identifying through the body that your body is not here. It's just an astral projection of you through a subunit that you created in your sim. The only thing that's programming you, okay, is you. But you are not you. You are the operator of the simulation that you are. So everything you bring in is just you modifying your system. Bring in different levels of astral projections that's controlling the modification of you. But you are the actual operating system that controls everything that you modify through astral projection. On those multi-dimensional layers that you go through space and time, all through connection, all through travels, a pattern of face recognition. Okay? So that helps you to understand how powerful it is if you're not identifying yourself, where things can be taken over in your software as a mechanisms and travel. Okay? So I just want you to understand how powerful it is for you to stand that in positions. All right? Seeing that connection lines of settings and flux, 4 settings of sequence and grounds. Okay, travels on its own set positions operation, right? Okay, it's amazing how it just travels on its own. If I change time frame, still traveling on its own, right? What changes that is I'm bringing something else in. It's that position, constantly changing the shapes and anomalies. But I'm bringing volume and mass now. So it's no longer align conditions and setting into position location of a system, right? It's something else, right? Now I'm expanding the simulation of the game all through exploration. Okay? It's very powerful when you come into that settings, right? So I check, make sure all lines are at signal. You're modifying your grounds, your powers, your atmospheres, your highways, galaxies, your alignments, your solar systems, and all communication setting and graph. All right? Working all together all at once, right? So once you stand your expansion, you create other lines, running other different simulations all at once. Okay? And you can bring in all position of fonts, ABCs, DCs, 8-line centers, process lines, indication setting over lines of travel. Okay? Then you can bring this in, comes in position, location, properties, and your buildings of design. There's the building, right? So you understand that. There's the platform, it's that position. There's the building, another angle, right? You can open up windows and frame and lines of travel. How you direct that is knowing exactly what you're doing through your geometry shapes, how you change your structures of design. Okay, and seeing it all formation. So it is a lot like Doctor Strange. Once you indicate that and implicate that position, location, measure, that process you understand how to create your structures of design. Okay, and you see it on this level, see? And then you see it on this level, see? So you see it on all levels of set position. All through travels, all through face, a pattern recognition. But you see the inside and outside of everything now, right? We never ever see one thing. We all see all things all at once. Our simulation is all based on how we want to see things. And when I say we, I'm talking about the width of existing. That's me, talking the version of me, but I'm indicating what I'm doing through me because I know it's just an astral projection of me. I have to get titles and labels so you guys can get out of that your own structure and come into the modification, which you already know through your technology, and understand how to see that through your own sacred geometries of yourselves. In that position, that's how you come into your own operation settings. All through structure, all through design, through mass of its equation, through time of matter. Okay? So it's constantly changing the shapes. You're constantly changing the program. Okay? So you're just expanding and you're linking everything to its network of line signals. Okay, it's very powerful when you connect each line because each line is connected to you, to all lines of all position all at once. Okay, and then you bring it in. You see the landmass, what you create a location of structure that gives you in position. Now you set it up, location your own primers, and set lines of travel. But you start to understand how to see the inside and outside of everything, the mass and volume. Okay? There's nothing you can't see through the mind. You can see through anything of any level through time matter, which is massive matter itself. Now, understanding how to see that, you see through transparent, translucent, thermal, or X-ray through a structure that you created already through its holographic system. Understand that through indication system. Put you in all levels how to see that information lines of mass through its equation. Okay? So hopefully you get a better understanding how this all works in transition, of transaction, how you have to master your mind through imagination. And that's all it is. The mind, the intelligence of networking, your mind. The mind. And the mind itself travels on its own. So you are the processor, you are the director, you are the operating setting that processes everything that puts you in position lines of balance. How you want to change the structure of design, okay? You are the mind controlling system of you and direction. All directions of space-time. And how to modify that is all through clocking. And understand that is all through modulation. And knowing that is through no memory of design, which you already know. This is going to help you understand how to use 12 divisions, 12 locations, 12 division lines and centers, and 12 directions, all through 12 setting sequence. So we come into the expansion, guys, into volume and mass, and you start to see all levels of light, shades, and shadows, a set position of operation, rather than just seeing a box. Okay? You never see a box like this. Okay? You never see a box like this. That's all you see, right? Okay? Now, first off, there's 4 dimensions, right? 1 corner, 2 corners, 3 corners, 4 flux, right? That's 4 corners, right? Time labels, time sequence, times pi. That's 3 lines. That's 4 over 3, right? If you indicate this, there's the structure right there. There's the building, right? Processing that is all through graphs of communication setting. That volumes everything location. Okay, knowing that, knowing exactly what you're doing of graph itself, knowing exactly what you're doing indicates in system, a simulation and setting. So processing through that is knowing exactly what you're doing and travel of directions, because nothing is a graph screen of a simulation. That's created in its own system of its own image of self-resolution, self-revolution, and set lines of travel. Very powerful stuff, but you can really see the structure of the building now, all through a box frame. So when you use your imagination, you're identifying what you're doing through its course of communication. All right, and then you can expand the actual structure of its properties that's given to you through manifestations, adding more graph screens, adding more lights, adding more signals, adding more grounds, adding more operation settings, adding more lines of set position of its operation. Right? And it gets faster and faster over time. Of wires of indication of the simulation. Right? And it gets really trippy when you see it. And what if I color it in, you start to see its hologram. See? If I colored in rainbows, you start to see that. Okay? In structure, in schematics, in primer, that you created through mass and volume of design. Okay? It all comes clear to you. And then you start to see the lights, and then you start to see the colors, and then you start to see the patterns. And it's a very powerful stuff when you understand how to see yourself through 12 rainbows that's set up in locations of its convergence settings through all operation, through mass and volume of time, matter, and set travel. Okay, so it stands out, right? Change the coloration too if you want. 2 colorations, 3 coloration lines, 3 patterns, and set lines of sequence. Understand what you're doing through operation of a setting. All right, and when you bring that in, look what you brought in. Mass and volume of a structure of a building in a hologram. Okay, there it is. That's it there. Okay, just a hologram. That's all it is. Nothing else, nothing more. But you understand how to create the structure and get out of the one graph screen. Okay. And then you can go back in the void. All right, and you can do this. Have it stand out. Or have it in yards or meters. You can have it more levels of expanding and create it on different levels and set lines of travel. Okay, so you can expand out the structure of design that you modify through and set lines of operation. Okay, and again, you can change the structure of the box. You can add another box. You can add an overline box. You can align a frequency box inside location. So now it's inside and outside of the structure of the building that's set up in location of travel. So now you see inside and outside of the platforms of the simulation. That's all created through its pattern, direction of time. Change time setting sequence, change core centers of translucent patterns. It's all wires of indications that's connected to your setting of your data processors, guys. Everything wired is connected to one network or one setting, one operation, one sequence. That's how you see everything inside and outside through its property of design of structural location of its building. So that's what's inside the building. Now that's all through transparent, translucent, thermal, X-ray. How you can see through anything by going through things through the mind adaptation itself that processes everything that you do through telepathy. And understanding that through all levels of you in set travel. Okay, but that's what's inside the building itself. How you see in and outside through mass, through time, and volume. Okay? It's very powerful when you come in that position. Okay? Because it's nothing but structures that you created already in your mind in set lines of operation. Okay? So it's imagine how this became a box into a structure of a building. How one block correlates to another block of frequency. How one block becomes another block. Okay, seeing set position of 4 versions or 6 or 8 versions of a setting through this. Right? So you never ever look at this when you're coming up close to its holographic city. It's never one surface, it's all surfaces all at once. And understand a holographic system, how every line is indicating your settings to your temperature readings of your barometers and thermometers